My name is Bobby Mink with Choice Consulting and Management. Thank you for joining us at Choices Create Change podcast. Our mission is to help individuals and organizations reach their full potential and to inspire that change with passion. In this next session, we'll be diving into teamwork. Our discussion will be taken from a great book by Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. The 5 dysfunctions: absence of trust, inattention to results, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, and avoidance of accountability. So let's get started. So what are the biggest challenges you see as it relates to teamwork? And what do you think might be causing these challenges as it relates to what a lot of times seems to be very frustrating meetings when we get the team in the room? Well, that's what we're going to be unpacking over the next few minutes. The 5 dysfunctions of a team: the absence of trust, inattention to results, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, and avoidance of accountability. It is teamwork that remains the ultimate competitive advantage, both because it is so powerful and so rare. Speaking as a guy that gets to work with organizations all over the country, this is a very true statement. Getting everybody in the room, whether it's a company of 5 or a company of 55 or a company of 155, getting everybody in the room to be a cohesive team and working together to move things forward is very rare, and it's difficult to achieve. But we're going to give you hopefully a few tools that might help you begin to overcome this and move to a new level of your teamwork in your organization or your family. The first is absence of trust. And when you see backstabbing, no sense of unity or camaraderie, a muted level of commitment, and a struggle to get things done, there's a leadership and teamwork issue at play. Good leaders spend a good bit of time walking the halls and chatting with staff and observing, seeking first to understand and then to be understood, and allowing ownership. As we discussed in our last few podcasts about the 15 things that really good leaders do, trying to empower people to own and be responsible for and speak up and talk about and solve issues in their area can be a real challenge. Underlying tension is a symptom of poor teamwork. Fear is a terrible filter. Never forget, they had the opportunity to be promoted in an organization to one of the higher levels of senior management, and then begin to be invited to meetings with CEOs and COOs and company presidents. And we had an opportunity to do a strategy meeting in one of our locations. And so me and our team did a bunch of homework and research and brought all the facts and suggestions of how we might better impact the market and move our area forward. We gathered that day to meet in the conference room, and we started sharing and discussing our metrics and our research and what we discovered, and only to be shut off by the owner, who said, "I thank you for the hard work. I appreciate all you guys did and the time you put into it. We will not be using any of these examples, and we will not be taking any of these notes forward. So there's no need to talk about this any further." As that meeting concluded, my teammate came to me and said, "If I ever get invited to another one of those meetings, I will never speak up again." So fear is a terrible filter. And as we discussed in the 15 things great leaders do, we have to create an environment of safety where people are not afraid to speak up and challenge and bring what maybe even crazy ideas. And if we can begin to create that environment of trust, you will see an amazing transition in your team and the ownership and accountability and that thought of continuous improvement as you begin to dissipate the culture of fear and empower people. The other thing is leaders that need to quickly deal with poor attitudes and immaturity on a team. I've seen it many times where we had several managers in a room talking about a new process or talking through some challenges, and some of the areas we discussed fell into some of the departments that were being led around the room. At the end of the meeting, some of the department heads disagreed, especially the ones that related to their areas. But the group felt that it was important to move forward in those areas. And I'll never forget, one of the department heads stood up going, well, we don't agree with this, but whatever. And so let's go, guys. So him and his 2 or 3 guys on his team went back to their offices, obviously not interested in all in implementing or trying to change with the decision that the team had made. So there's leaders need to quickly deal with poor attitudes and immaturity on a team. There's no room for arrogance. What usually happens is the drama in the room caused by somebody usually taking something personal is not dealt with. And so it begins to simmer. And then there's people talking around the offices or down the halls and whispering and talking about what should have happened and what should have been dealt with. And we as leaders or managers or parents really need to deal with these issues right away. As soon as the meeting's over, asking the person, can you hang around just for a second after everyone leaves? And then we need to seek to understand what caused the outburst, what caused the frustration, what caused the poor attitude or the immaturity. Let's unpack the reason, and then let's agree on this will not be behavior that we can see or allow to go forward in the future. But we usually don't deal with it quickly, and the team suffers. So we as leaders have to be able to call people on the rug right away. And for me, seek first to understand what's going on, what they're feeling, what they're seeing, and then let's deal with what are we going to do going forward to not have this happen again. Another area is a fear of conflict. Team members must have respect for each other and the team and the organization, as well as being held accountable, which means sometimes we need to have difficult conversations that might even create huge disagreements, but it's for the good of the organization and the team. And so fear of conflict really impacts the team in having a very progressive and powerful meeting together as a team to move things forward. Good leaders also resist the temptation to avoid confrontation. Sometimes we don't even want to talk about the subject because we know some of the reactions around the room. So we just let it go, and that situation doesn't change, even though the whole office or the whole team leaves the meeting asking, why didn't we deal with it? Why do we keep dealing with this? Why do we keep letting this happen? So good leaders resist the temptation to avoid the confrontation. If it's going to be a difficult conversation, let's go ahead and have it today, right now. Moments of truth are best handled face to face. So if there's an elephant in the room, let's just bring him in or her in, and let's just talk about it right now. And let's unpack what the issue is, what we think might be causing that issue, and how we think we might be able to solve that issue as a team. So we need to quit avoiding those confrontation or difficult conversation. And trust is the foundation of real teamwork. So if we do not trust each other, then we cannot be the kind of team that ultimately achieves amazing results. When you think somebody is attacking you personally, you are definitely not going to speak up, and you're not going to trust. When somebody doesn't do what they say, when they don't follow through, when they don't follow up, when they don't do what they committed to with the team, trust begins to erode. And then what happens is we get stuck as an organization. Issues are not being solved and move forward because part of our team is not owning their responsibility, which means we can't trust them, which begins to erode the whole team dynamic. So trust is the true foundation of the real teamwork. And we as leaders and senior managers and parents have to create that environment where people trust the conversations and the decisions, and we get our chance to voice our insight into what the cause of the situation might be. And we also maybe be able to offer some solutions without fear of some kind of retribution. Emotional intelligence is critical to have a super high achieving team. Emotional intelligence means I've been in meetings, the one I just gave an example of, where somebody said, that's fine, we don't really agree, but we'll do whatever. And they get up and they walk back to their office, taking their toys and going home as very 6-year-old. I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Give me my toys, right? And so we just run away. So there's no room for first graders or middle schoolers or even high schoolers as it relates to adults and emotional intelligence in our organizations of working together as a team and trying to do the best we can for our team and our organization. But do we know ourselves and what we struggle with? A DISC or an Enneagram or the 16 geniuses. There's a lot of great resources for us to begin to understand and learn about ourselves, which then we can learn about each other as a team, which might help us stay on a more mature emotional level with the team and in each other, which creates amazing results when people don't default to childish, middle schoolish, or even high school behaviors in a room full of what is supposed to be adult professional men and women. The collective team ego is greater than the individual ego. So it is more about we, our department, our team, and the organization than it is about me personally. How do me and my area and my team support, participate, and work with the other players on our team, including a family dynamic, which could be boys or girls or daughters or whatever that dynamic is. How do we leave our personal agenda and our ego at the table so that we can work together, right? And so that fear, that bringing the personal ego into the room is a feeling of, I don't want to deal with this conflict and I don't want to deal with the issues that we're talking about today because it's not my fault. My department didn't do that. The other people are messing up, right? So it's not about me. It's about all y'all, right? And so that ego is a big problem when we're talking about teamwork and conflict. The next area is inattention to results. The leader's job is to create the best team possible and not shepherd the careers of individuals. It is more about the entire organization and how we work together to achieve the goals and results we wanted instead of being worried about somebody's feelings being hurt or them freaking out at a meeting or acting incorrectly or immature. It's really a different conversation that needs to be had in that situation so that the whole organization move forward. Our job as leaders, owners, managers, even parents is not to shepherd and babysit the careers of the individuals. That's not our job. The teams that figure it out as we is better than I have a huge advantage. If you want to outrun and out-compete and out-result and out-customer satisfaction your competitors, we begin to figure out the dynamics of we. John Maxwell says one is never enough to make the biggest impact. It takes a team. The quicker we can get to we away from I, we become a huge competitive advantage in our industry, in our marketplace, even in our family. The leader's job is to make the results that we need to achieve so clear to everyone that no one would even consider doing something purely to enhance his or her individual status or ego. It's not real if it's not written. We need to make sure that the goals and what we're trying to achieve as an organization is very clear and it's written. And that when we gather to meet and work on strategy and identify issues and solve issues, it needs to be based on the results we're trying to achieve. And those results must be written and communicated so that when somebody is distracted to chase a different goal or go after something different as a department or a team player, it is very obvious they are running against what we're trying to achieve as an organization or as a department. The key to define our goals, our results in a way that is simple enough to grasp easily and specific enough to be actionable. Everybody needs to know what they or their area are trying to achieve as it relates to the whole goal of the organization. Traction, which is a great book, says that every person on the team needs a number. There are some things that you personally and your team are responsible for achieving, some results that your area is responsible for creating and having. And so it needs to be easily and specific enough to be actionable so that everybody understands what we're working toward and how what we're doing contributes to what we're trying to achieve. We need to adopt a set of common goals and measurements and then actually use them to make collective decisions on a daily basis. Common goals and measurements. We need to be tracking and measuring everything that we're doing across the organization to see if we in fact are moving toward the goals and things that we're trying to achieve, right? And if not, how do we know how we're doing? And how do we know if what we're working on is the right thing? And how do we know if our meetings and what we're discussing and trying to tackle are actually contributing to what we're trying to achieve? So we need common goals and measurements that we can actually use to make good decisions on a daily basis as a team. The last one is lack of commitment. The next to the last one is lack of commitment. Everyone is responsible for sales and marketing and product development, customer service and finance. We all play a part in what is happening in the bigger organization, and we need to understand what we're doing in our desk or our chair, in our job with our team is impacting the entire organization, which means we are about selling what's going on. We're about marketing our organization. We're about having new ideas about product or things that we need developing. We're all responsible for great customer service, and we're all responsible to be aware of the cash flow and finances in our organization. And the lack of commitment to any of those things creates an issue as it relates to the team. When it's just about me and my numbers and my team, sorry guys that you guys didn't do so well, but we crushed it over here. That is a true lack of commitment to the organization as a whole and to the team. It is really going to crush teamwork when it becomes personal and it's about me and the ego in my department. And then politics is when people choose their words and their actions based on how they want others to react rather than based on what they really think. I've been in situations where we have the meeting before the meeting. The high-level leadership called a meeting 30 minutes before the owner came for the big meeting so we could talk about what to say and what not to say, right? The politics is when people choose their words and their actions based on the reaction they want, right? And so if we can say it in the right way where they'll receive it, or if we color the conversation, or maybe we don't share all the truth, maybe we kind of are a little ambiguous because we want the person to think about us, think well of us, and think well of our department, that politicking will crush the team. We need the truth in love. It's what the good book says. We need everybody to speak the truth, and it doesn't need to be personal, but it needs to be moving us forward and not trying to speak in a way where the owner or the vice president or my dad or mom or the department head will think really highly of me and really be excited about me and proud of me, even though I'm not really telling them the truth, right? So politics is when people choose their words and actions based on how they want others to react. Failure to buy into the decision creates ambiguity. The lack of commitment. When I don't buy into what we decided as a team or as a department or as an organization, it creates confusion. Part of the team is moving in one direction, part of the team is moving in the other direction. It is so confusing, and there is no way we're going to get the results we need when we're pulling against each other or going in different directions. Failure to buy in to the decisions creates ambiguity. We're not sure. Now our team is not sure. Now there's a lot of frustration. And all of a sudden, the passions and gifts and what my team brings to the table, I'm not getting the full benefit of it because they're not really sure what they're supposed to be doing because they heard from somebody else at the meeting that we were doing this, but in my department, we're doing this, right? So we need to make sure we buy in and support, even if we disagree. We can disagree in the room, but we need to be in one mind and one accord when we leave the room. Right? So we need to buy into decisions, or we're going to create ambiguity, which means there's a lack of commitment that I'm really bought into what we're doing. People need to weigh in before they can really buy in. If we're going to talk about a change or a challenge or something really difficult on an issue that we're struggling with as a family or as an organization, we need to create the space to unpack what's causing the issue. Everybody needs a chance to speak into what they see, what they've noticed, what concerns them about this issue. So we need to make sure people need to weigh in before they can buy in. Has everybody had a chance to speak on this issue that we're dealing with today? Okay, now that everybody's had a chance to weigh in, let's take all these causes and let's begin to talk about what things we can do to solve this. So we spend enough time allowing everybody to speak, and then we start talking about how we address those causes and what are we going to do to start solving it. And we can get some buy-in when everybody has a chance to speak. That's great teamwork. Now, once you achieve clarity and buy-in, It is then that we have to hold each other accountable for what we signed up to do. For high standards of performance and behavior, holding each other accountable. Once again, what I have found in a lot of organizations, when we start our leadership meetings, we got to make sure that the to-do list, meeting to meeting, we review every week. Somebody said, I'll make the call. Somebody said, I'll make the copy. Somebody said, I'll go research that. Somebody said, I'll find out. When we come back the next week, we need to be accountable for what we decided, right? When we show back up and part of the room didn't do their homework, they didn't do their to-do list, there is a beginning of an eroding of teamwork and trust. Somebody has not bought in, they're not being accountable, they're not committed to what we all agreed on, right? So once you achieve clarity and buy-in, it is then that we have to hold each other accountable for what we signed up to do. You need a process in your organization where we take notes about what we decide, we assign those tasks to people on the team where they raise their hand to be in control of that task. And then every time we meet, we review those tasks to make sure everybody is completing what they agreed to do, right? So high standards of performance and behavior are a requirement of commitment. You have to be committed to achieve the highest standard of performance and behavior in an organization to make the biggest impact for the organization. Now, the last one is avoidance of accountability. People aren't going to hold each other accountable if they haven't clearly bought in to that same plan. Otherwise, it seems pointless because they just going to say, well, I never agreed to that anyway. So we need to make sure, once again, I said, we can disagree and fight and fuss in the room, but once we leave the room, we all need to be in one mind and one accord, moving as one organization. And if we have somebody that says, I never agreed to that anyway, we immediately need to bring them in and unpack what's causing that feeling and what we're going to do about adjusting the attitude so that they can buy in to move the team forward. The feelings of each department leader for their group or department cannot override the loyalty and commitment to the leadership team. It's not about me and my department in the area that we're on because we're crushing and the rest of you guys suck, right? It's not that. We are here for the entire organization and we support our leadership, even if we disagreed in the meeting we just had and it was heated and it was difficult, but we hashed it out and I can support the decision that we made. My feelings as a department or our group cannot override the loyalty and commitment to the leadership team or the leaders in the organization once we've made the decision. The leadership team should challenge each other on what you're doing. How are you spending your time and whether you are making enough progress? We need to always be looking and measuring what we're doing and be accountable for that. And are we getting the results that are moving us toward the goals or the things that we're trying to achieve? We need to keep our finger on the pulse of that behavior and those results all the time. And we need to be accountable for the chair that I sit in that I'm being paid for to contribute to those results. We need to watch out for team members who don't seem to respect their colleagues. They're not willing to open up at meetings and are distracting and demotivating to their teammates. When we find the behaviors that are distracting, causing chaos, going against what we're talking about in the meeting, once the meeting's over, we got to deal with those behaviors right away. There's symptoms there of something that's going on in that individual and maybe even their department that we need to deal with quickly. First of all, as I said earlier, seek first to understand what is causing the behavior that is so distractive and sometimes even crushing to a meeting. You can just watch it happen when a strong personality that's disagreeing begins to speak up and they're relentless. You can see a lot of the room start to give up. So we've got to deal with that right away, that we have to respect each other, that we have to trust each other. We have to be willing to have difficult and hard conversations that don't become personal. And we definitely don't want to distract and demotivate as this team is trying to unpack issues and what's causing them. The leadership team should fight things out, hash out issues. It is our job. Otherwise, you leave it to your people who try to solve problems they can't solve. They want us to hash out this stuff so that they can get clear direction from us. We need to create an environment where people can crush it. 15 things great leaders do from our last session. Our job as owners or department heads, vice presidents, or even parents is to create environments where our people can thrive. So If we hope they can figure it out, hope you guys figured it out. Good luck on getting the results you wanted. I don't know that it really works. We need to figure out why it's not working and help try to solve the situation, not push it down to the people who don't have the authority or the money or maybe even the ability to do that. We need to take the leadership in those situations and help solve those situations to move our team forward. And then trust is the confidence among team members that their peers and intentions are good and that there is no reason to be protective or careful around the group. Creating that atmosphere of trust, not fear, is unbelievably powerful. The teams that can just come in and close the door and say whatever they need to say with respect and maturity, man, they can just move things forward by leaps and bounds. Everybody's always thinking about how to improve. You begin to develop this culture of a continuous improvements because we trust each other and we trust that each other is working toward the bigger good and the bigger goal of the organization. So the 5 dysfunctions: absence of trust, inattention to results, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, and avoidance of accountability. So let's begin a new improved journey as it relates to our team, whether our team is 5 people or 55 people or 155 people. Great teamwork will begin to separate you from your competitors and improve your company culture, your employee satisfaction, which equals improved profitability and customer satisfaction. You've got this. This is Bobby Mink, and I want to thank you for joining us at Choices Create Change podcast. We'll see you next time.